G'day and welcome back to part 3 of my STC radio restoration. Last week I repaired the damaged speaker cone, stripped the radio down and repainted it. This week I'm going to try to reassemble it, and with a bit of luck it'll work again. I hope you'll sit back and relax and enjoy part 3. I have the centre section inside with me. I'm going to mount the capacitor. I've laid out the parts for mounting the capacitor. These actually mount the centre section. There's some old washers there, they're rusty. I'll put some new ones in. So there's 3 mount bolts for this. This should be pretty easy, just goes in there. So there's one screw there, I'll put a washer on there. Shake-proof washer, and then the nut. So I'll just slightly nip that up. I've got to put the other 2 in yet. I can tighten these 2 all the way up. And this one too. Turns out these larger washers actually go under the tuning condenser itself, not on the bottom of the chassis, so I'll swap those over. I put those washers up the top instead of underneath like they're supposed to be. Bit of flux on there, and there's probably enough solder in there. I'll just add a little bit more. I still have the other 2 of these to do, so I'll fit those on and I'll have a look at doing the earth braids underneath. I've turned the chassis over again. There's 2 earth braids there that have got to go in, so I've got to try and get in there with this big iron. It does a good job, but it could be a bit smaller sometimes. Right, there's another one. This one's got capacitors to go on there, so that'll look a bit neater once I put new caps on top. I think that's about all the assembly I can do on this, so I'm going to get the main chassis and I'll start rebuilding that. Now I've got the main chassis inside now. The first thing I want to do is put the covers back on these IF coils. I've already put a new wire on there that goes out the top and onto the top of one of the valves. Now the trick is to get this wire through the little hole there. I normally pass the wire through the top and then solder on the bottom and then pull it down and cut the wire off to length, but for some reason I didn't do that this time. But I'll get there. Yeah, definitely easier going the opposite direction. I should be able to get it through though. I just got to retrieve the little bolt that goes through there. There it is. This IF coil also needs a wire at the top, so I'll do this the way I should have done the first one. That's got to go over there eventually. And what I should have done the first time is feed the wire in from the top, then feed the wire through here and solder onto this tab. Now of course it's just a matter of dropping that down and the wire's already in there. Much easier this way. So I'll finish this one off and do the other ones. I'll come back when I've finished putting them all in. I'm going to mount this center section back in. It has little rubber mounts around here and I have some replacements. I've got one fitted already. These are pretty good, except that gap in there is too wide for this piece of metal, so they're a bit sloppy on there. I'm going to pack it with an O-ring, and I've already done that here if you can see it in there. So I'll mount this in here. They go in okay. And then I'll just put the O-ring around it, and that makes a good tight fit. That's good. I've got 3 of these rubbers in, and I can't put that one in until I get the center bit in. With the rubber mounts in, I couldn't get this center section out. I had to cut the rubber mounts. Well, I won't be able to get the rubber mounts in once this is in position. I'm going to take the nut off here, and hopefully that'll allow me to push that back enough to get it in. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Right, it goes in like that. That shaft has to come through the center there. And we should be able to sit it down, I think. Now here's where I move the nut. Hopefully that'll push down enough to let me get this in. At least get it in there. And then another one. There we go. I have to try and get this rubber in here now. Okay. Now the next thing is to try and get this O-ring around. I think I can do it with a couple of screwdrivers. I think that's it. Alright, that's gone in. I've managed to get this in here. It was pretty tight. I've put the 2 front mounts on and screwed them down, and that was the only way I could get the back ones in. But it's got a little brass bush there. I had to manipulate that a bit to get the thread to line up, so this should screw in now. Yeah. Just get this one in. If this goes in, this will be the last one. Now these two on the front I've also done up, and that's pretty good. It's got a rubber mount to it now, so happy with that. There's a good chance I'll have to take this out again. There's probably connections underneath that I should have made before I put this in. Now comes the task of putting all this back together. I took lots of photos and I've marked a lot of the wires that I took off, so it shouldn't be too hard. So there's some here that says pin 2, so it goes up there. That one says 7, that goes there. That one says pin 3, so it goes what here. There's other ones here, so I've marked them all. I don't know where that goes, so I'll just refer to my photos and it should go on there all right. I haven't fitted the transformer yet. I thought I'll leave that out because it does give me some access in here if I need to get to some, something hard to get to there. Yeah, so I don't think this will be too hard. It'll probably take me a couple of hours. I'll do this, I'll come back and we'll see if it's going to work or not. Now, as I said, it took about 2 hours, probably 3 hours. I've connected everything up again, and I'm pretty sure it's correct. I don't think I've made any mistakes. As I said, I took lots of photos. I made a little video for myself just going around pointing out various connections. So that all helped put it back together. Numbering these wires with a little sleeving, that was very helpful. I also mounted the transformer and connected it up, and I've put a mains cable on here so we can test it. So I think it's pretty good. I need to turn it over and I need to do the top now, put some caps on for the valves and things like that. Apart from putting the valves in, all I need to do is fit valve caps onto these wires here. There's a couple here that need new wires. There's one down the back here. I've got to try and lengthen that a little bit. It's a bit short. I've finished putting the connectors on. I have the speaker here and I've finished that off as I said I would. And I've got it plugged into the back of the radio. I've put 3 valves in. I've got the rectifier, the output and the preamp. So if all goes well and there's no smoke, I should be able to touch that and get a buzz through the speaker. Let's put it on. I've got it on dim bulb, about 230 volts. Watch that bulb. Nothing. Oh no, there it goes. That looked good. The bulb hasn't even come on. I can see a glow in there. The bulb has just come on very dim. 30, I can hear some noise through the speaker. Alright, so if I touch that, there it is, good. Alright, I'm going to put the rest of the valves in. There's really no reason this shouldn't work. I said I was going to put the valves in and turn it on. I won't do that. I will do it step by step. Here's the diode here, the double diode, and here's a 6U7. So that's the IF, should go through there, then come out here. We know that part works. So let's put some power on again. This is still on dim bulb, of course. But I've let that settle for a minute or so. The bulb's on. What have we got? 34. That seems reasonable. It's dropped it to 186. That seems excessive. So now that's not working. I'll give it a bit more juice. Still not working. Let's turn that off. Take the diode out. Turn it back on. Alright, take that valve out again. Now I have got a 6U7 in, it says so, looks like one. I'll put the power on again. That is just working and that's all. 200 volts. I flipped the radio over. These are the 3 valves here. That's the rectifier, the output valve and the preamp. I can measure the B plus here and I'll measure the plate voltages on the output valve. So I'll put some power on. So I should be able to measure B plus here. This is after it's been through the field coil. 140, it'll be higher here. 150 or so, 161. So we've got B plus there. Here's the bottom of the 6V6, so that's pin 1, 2, 3. This should be the screen. and we've got 116 volts. The plate should be something higher than that. That's pin 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 139, and this will be the grid. Now that's got 1 volt on it. That should be almost 0. I'll just check the grid bias. That's that one there, and I think it's pin 8. Oh no, it's pin 8. 1 volt. That's not right. Hang on. Well, so let's check the cathode against ground. Yeah, see, that should be minus 12 or more. Something's wrong with the grid bias. I'll just turn power off. There's the cathode wire there, going down there, and goes in that board. Well, there's the cathode capacitor there, so yeah, so that's it, and I can see around the back here that goes to ground on this bolt here. That wire almost looks like it's attached to the pin on that valve. I wonder if they're touching. Seems to be a gap there. I've zoomed right in, I can't quite see it, but there's the pin for the valve, and that's the wire we just looked at. I think it might be touching. I'll loosen the board off here and see if that is in fact touching. So I'll take the screw out. I reckon it is touching, just looking at it from the back here. Yeah, it's touching it. So that's what's going on there. Alright. I'll undo this bottom one as well and pull that away. I can trim a bit of the wire off. There it is there. Big dag of solder. I don't know that I did that or not, but anyway, I'll cut it off. This is the valve socket tab that it was hitting, so I'll see if I can bend that back a little. Give it a bit more room. I wasn't totally happy with that bend I put in it, so I bent it right down, and there's no way it's going to go near it now. I'll remount this board and we should be in business. There it is there, plenty of space now. I will check the BIOS again. Alright, we'll check it again. I've grounded the other probe. I should have 9 or 10 or something. There you go. And that should be 0.02. Perfect. Okay, we're back to where we should have been. I've turned it over. I've got the diode back in and a 6U7 between the two IFs there. Let's put some power on. Alright, it's warmed up. Perfect. And we're getting a bit of a buzz through there. Fantastic. I'm going to put the rest of the valves in and I'll tune in a radio station. Alright, all the valves are in. Whoops, I didn't put the cap on that one. I haven't put any shields on either. We'll see what happens. It might howl a bit. I am very confident. Here comes some noise.
So although I had been proclaimed the historian for the island in 2000, volunteer, all this stuff keeps on coming up.
I've seen that video that's shot of you on the
Perfect.
island.
Okay, stations are all down this end.
Today, and you look at the price and you think, oh no, that's too expensive. And then you look at something else. But fruit and veg generally are easy to buy. Some
W will be there.
Perfect. There we go. Whoops. Even the speaker works, so that's good. Alright, very happy now. I did get a little concerned when that stopped working, but I figured it was some sort of intermittent thing because it was working 1 minute and not the next. I don't know why that happened. Maybe pushing the valve in was enough to just make contact. Maybe I moved it with my hand, I don't know. Anyway, all working now, so I'll move on to the next part. I need to go through all the valves and pick out some good ones and repopulate it. I'll put the shields on. I'll then do a quick check of the alignment, and I still have to rebuild the front here that goes on over this. So still a fair bit to do, but yeah, very happy with the result now. I went through and tested valves and put good ones in here, so they're all okay. This one down here is a new one. I didn't test that, but it should be okay. It's certainly working. This one is a new 6F6, new old stock, and it tested perfectly. The only one I'm having trouble with is this 5Y3. This should be a 5Z4. I don't have one. I did have one, but it was a mislabeled 5Y3, so that was no good. So I put a 5x3 in there. The only difference really that affects it is that these are directly heated and the 5Z4 is not. It's indirectly heated. All that means is because it's directly heated, you get a voltage surge, and that surges through the capacitors and the field coil. That's not a problem. A lot of radios do that, so I don't think it's a real issue. The capacitors I've fitted are 650 volts. They'll surge much higher than that anyway. 650 is their running voltage. I would think this would only ever get to maybe 500, probably less. I thought for fun we might just check the surge, see what it is. The other thing I need to do is just make sure the bias is okay for this 6F6. I checked it yesterday and it was about right. I think it was about 10 and we're on dim bulbs, so that's about right. Anyway, I'll do that in a second, but I'll just see what we get for a surge. I have my meter here, so I'll put that on DC. It's actually DC and AC. And if I push rec on it, go to max, I think it bips all the time, that's the only thing. I'll put some power on. Okay, so the maximum it got to was 472. As I said, the caps are rated at about 650, so that's no problem. I'll turn it off, flip it up, and we'll check the bias. Here's the bottom of the 6F6, the output valve. There's the key there. So that's pin 1, 2, 3, 4 is the plate. And right around number 8 is the cathode. So this voltage here is plate voltage, and we got 220. That's probably a bit low really for a plate voltage, but not much I can do about it. Now just go on the cathode here if I can. And we've got 13.2. I've got my book of valves here. 6F6 is, let's see, grid number 1, control grid in a Class A amplifier. Should be minus 16 at 250. We're at 220, so minus 13 seems pretty reasonable. 285 is minus 20, so yeah, that'll do. I think that's pretty much perfect actually. Just out of interest, that's the B plus before it goes through the field coil on the speaker. So the field coil is rated at 2500 ohms, so it's dropping the voltage quite a bit there. I'm happy with the bias and I'm happy with the plate voltage, that'll be fine. Now the next thing I want to do is the dial on the front. I'm going to reassemble the dial and the dial tuning mechanism, but before I do, there's a little rubber universal joint that goes on here and on here as well, and that joins the two together. The little universal has a rubber membrane in the center there, and it's gone hard and there's a bit of slop there, so that won't help tuning. I'm going to remake the little rubber disc, and I will put some new rivets through. I'll also stick it in the media blaster and get rid of the rust on here. To cut the little membrane, I thought I'd use my laser cutter. I think I had a quick shot of this in one other video, it might have been this one, but it's a laser cutter and it'll cut a circle in rubber, they tell me, so I haven't tried it yet. I've drawn up the rubber cutout that I need in this Lightburn software, and I'll transfer that to the laser cutter and cut it out, I hope. I'm ready to do a test run. I've got a bit of cardboard in there. I'll just cut that first, make sure it's going to be the right shape. Alright, let's see. That looks pretty good. Yeah. Disregard that. That's a cup that's come up from the bottom on a test I did earlier. So, yeah, that looks good. Alright, I'll cut that out in rubber. We'll see how it goes. There it is, and it's no good. The holes are way too big. By the time it cut through this thickness of rubber, the holes were way too big, and the diameter is too small, of course, because it's done the same thing. It's just kept cutting it. So it's a bit smaller in diameter than it should be. Maybe a thinner piece of rubber would have gone through and still been okay, but yeah, that's no good. So what I might do is just do a very simple pass, one pass. That'll put the marks on there, and I can use them and some hollow punches to punch it out. I cut a piece of rubber out doing what I said, just used a hollow punch and followed the marks left by the laser cutter. I have taken these off and cleaned them up so they're nice and clean, and I just need to rivet these down. Now I've got my mandrel here. This will dome over the top of those little brass hollow rivets. I'll just do it gently. I'll put another one on the other side. Alright, that's all back together now, and I put a little mandrel right through the centre to make sure it was lined up. You don't want it, you know, out of whack. So that'd make it harder to tune than ever. So that's in there. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, I've got all the parts ready. I was just cleaning out the holes for the bearings that go in there, or the shafts. Everything's laid out here. I think I've got all the parts for this. There's all the nuts and bolts up the end there. It's a bit of a jigsaw, and I don't think I took any video of me pulling it apart, so it's going to be interesting, but it should be alright. This is the main panel, and that, I guess, goes there. That looks good. Okay, so that's where the shaft goes for the tuning, and the drive comes out there to drive the capacitor. That's where that little universal joint will go. That's the hole for the tuning shaft, so if I put the shaft in there, I'll put some blocks of wood there to hold that up. This arc has to mesh with the little washers in there, so I guess that goes there. Oh, hang on, the shaft's going to be, no, that's no good. The shaft would have been coming out through the glass, so that has to go that way. Right. There's an anti-hysteresis spring here, and this little gear, and that meshes in there obviously, but I don't remember what that does, what that's for. Actually I do remember. Hang on, where are we? That's for the pointer. That's for the pointer. So that's going to go that way, isn't it? Because the little screw to do it up, I wonder where the screw's gone. The little screw to do it up was through the back, I think. I'm not convinced of that. Might have been there. It's got to go that way. It has to go that way. I think this plate's upside down. I had it right the first time. That bearing will go, oh sorry, this gear, I mean, will go in here. Then this will go on top like that. So I'll put it together for real. I'll put a smear of grease up on the bearing area. I can put that in there. Smear of grease on here. Also put a bit on the teeth, I guess. I'll put some grease on here. The spring's got to go on. There's two holes. I don't guess it matters. It's only a gear that's got no location on it particularly. Alright, I'll put some grease on the spring as well. That has to move within itself, plus it'll stop it going rusty, and it's come out of its hole, so I'll have to put it back again. I think I've got that backwards. The spring goes on this side through the hole there. Yeah, like that. Alright, so I'll put a bit of grease here. So that goes in there. The spring's going to keep falling off. That's alright. So now I have to get that to mesh in there. Alright. The disc needs to go between these two pinch washers here, and then I've got to try and line the shaft up here, and then I've got to put that gear back. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll take the nuts off there, or get those pinch washers out. That'll get rid of one problem. I'll take these pinch washers off because it's just too hard to hold three things at once. I doubt they did this in the factory. This would have been assembled, but I'll do it this way. So I'll leave one washer on. So if I lay that on there, then I can put that in that hole there. So I need to tension that in there. Then, hey, it's got to engage in the gear there, and I think we've done it. Now this plate should go on here, I guess, and hold it all together. Come on. Okay, that looks good, I think. I'll find the screws, I'll put that on, and that will finish that bit. Screws in and adjusted the plate so that everything's central. I think I can put this little washer on here now, and the little dome fitting there. tighten this nut up here and then put the other nut on to lock it all together. Now this plate goes on there, so I'll put a bit of grease on that axle there, and that goes like that, I think. Yeah. Alright, so all I have to do is put some bolts in here and it's done. I think what happens is this plate doesn't bolt on separately, it picks up the bolts that go through into the chassis. I'll fit that little universal joint or flex joint. Okay, that's got to go through there, that hole, and line up the flexible joint. That needs a little finessing. I'll put the bolts in and I should be able to line everything up. I've mounted the front on again. Now I need to connect this flexible joint up. To align it I need to get this level, so I'll put it down to about level. Pretty hard to see, but it's about level there. So I'll hold the shaft and I'll put the tuner at about the, I don't know, 9 o'clock, about there, halfway up anyway. So I'll just nip these up. Just do the other two up as well. Now I can see from here that shaft's not lined up, so I'm going to adjust that front face to get it a bit more closely lined up. I adjusted the front panel a little bit and these are lined up pretty well now, so I'm happy to leave that as it is. Alright, that's pretty much done. All I've got to do is put the glass on and the pointer. I'm not going to bother showing that. I'll come back when that's done. I've taken this whole dial plate off again. I made an error yesterday. When I said this back plate is held on with the screws that hold to the chassis, that's not right. It actually has two little screws in there which I have put in now, and that allows you to adjust the position and then put it on the radio, just mount it onto the chassis. So I mounted this and then had to try and adjust it, and it was difficult, so I took it off. I've put the two screws in and I've adjusted it. Everything's fine now. I've put the dial and the pointer back on. That's all working perfectly now. Before I do the alignment, I'll change the sheathing on this Magic Eye socket. I'm not going to show that. It's pretty easy. I'll just take that off and put a new one on. I need to set up the RF alignment now. I needed to adjust that flexible join just to get this pointer in the right place when I put it all together. I have my generator on 600. The radio's powered there, it is there. So I'll just wind that down. We should get it somewhere near 600. No, it's not far out. Now here's the adjustment for that. Down here. Oh, that's about as far as it's going to go. Yeah, well, that's tight. Okay. If you saw part 1, you'll know that I changed the 250 picofarad capacitor with 220, and that's the adjustment we're making now. I've got a 33 picofarad here. I'll put that in and see if that will bring the adjustment up a bit. There's the 33 picofarad there. I've just tacked it across the 220 over there. Alright, the power's back on. I'll turn it up. So we're closer, I think. About there, we're a bit past it, which is good because it means I can back it off a little bit. So I'll put it on 600. Should be able to turn that counterclockwise. I think that's it there. That's perfect there. I'm just doing this by ear, I'm not using any meters. Now I'll go to 15. Actually, I'll go to 14. Now I've changed the generator to 14. Where are we? That's up there. Alright, I'll see if I can bring that back down. Now, according to my calculations, this should be the one I want. Let's see what happens. I'll move that closer to 14. It's really not there, is it? Where is it? Oh, it's way up there. Right, I'll move it slightly towards 14. Perfect. So that's right on 14. Yeah. Good. I'll just fine tune those two off camera. It's too hard to keep moving the big chassis around in the cameras. So let me just fine tune all that. I'll come back when it's finished. I've tuned the radio to 1500. I've got the generator on 1500. This should be the trimmer for the medium wave. So I'll trim that to peak volume. It's about there somewhere. It's right there, I think. Alright. That'll do for the alignment. I'll leave it at that. I'll do the 2 short waves off camera. It's just a matter of picking a point and making sure the adjustments are correct. That'll be for the 2 short waves there. A couple of little jobs to fix up, and that's the end of this. It'll be finished. The dial's back on, the pointer's back on. It's working alright now. I put all the lights in. Initially I didn't put any of the lights or the wiring in, just to keep it simple so I could get the radio to work. So I've wired all that up now and that's working fine. I've replaced that sheathing there and I've painted all this up, cleaned it all up, put the magic eye in. So that's working, the magic eye is working. When I was aligning this, I noticed this has a slight tendency to slip sometimes. And it just did it then. It's kind of when you really wheel it around like that. If you're just doing a normal tune, it's alright, but it's stopping there. It's just slipping a little bit. So I think I'll take this front off again and see if I can fix it. Here's the little friction washers here. I turned them over. You can see probably there's a little groove in there. That's where they've worn over the years. So I turned them over and all that's happened now is these have just peeled back because they've lost all that thickness there. I'll take these out. We'll see what I can come up with. I've taken the nuts off and the little washer that holds it, and you can see this washer's just bent up. It hasn't got enough strength left in it. So what to do? These are spring steel, these washers. Yeah, so I don't have a spring steel washer anywhere. So I might have to come up with something else, I think. As luck would have it, I went through a box of junk that I bought at the radio auctions and found part of the same mechanism. So this is the washers out of that. Now this is the bottom one and this is the top one, and the top one's worn the same as mine is. What if I put the 2 bottom ones together? I'll have 2 reasonably good ones. So I'll try that, see if that fixes it. I have the original lower washer on there. I'll put the new washer on top. There's a little conical spacer. Put the nut on. If I hadn't have found that, I was thinking of using a spring and maybe some normal washers and just spring load it. The problem with that idea is that the washers aren't attached to this shaft, so they could in theory spin. I would need to attach one of them somehow to the shaft. Anyway, we'll see how this one goes. Oh, that's pretty good. That's tight. Alright, I'll put this all back together. That is now absolutely positive. There's no suggestion of a slip in there. Perfect. Beautiful. So that was a good outcome. I was lucky I bought that box of junk from the club auction. I'm going to put a fuse in there and a mains plug, and I think that'll about do it. So the radio is pretty much done. I put some stickers back on the back like it used to have. I've put the fuse in, but this has been a remarkable change because this was really in very poor condition. So it's looking really nice. The dial's okay. Some of the paint's trying to fall off, but it's generally looking pretty good. Since I've repaired the speaker, I haven't tried it with the cover off, so I'll do it now. So it's got a few patches on it, and by adding patches I've added weight to it, which means it wants to keep moving. It's got more mass, so it's probably affected its tone, but we'll see if it sounds alright. I think it'll be alright. I'll put some power on it. We'll have a listen. Alright, I've got it on. There's some thunderstorms in the area, so we're going to hear a bit of thunderstorm activity in the background. I can't do much about that. Now that sounds pretty good to me. This will sound much better in this cabinet, of course, but it sounds pretty good. Of course, I can't keep playing that. So that's working alright. There's the magic eye. Let's have a look at that. That's working. Let's go up there. Yeah.
Live on Optus Sport, see football's biggest heroes back in action at club level after their World Cup heroics. You might know him as the best goalkeeper in the world. We know him simply as Alisson. After saving goals.
There's some thunderstorms coming.
Acknowledges there are problems. He says his government is investing.
Governments, both past and present, of all colours, discussed quite lengthy discussion with my wife about what I wanted to say about Australia Day, because
Aside from Halloween, better than a poke and eyes under lock and key.
Voyages are award-winning small ships with only 930 guests and all veranda staterooms. Enjoy Viking's all-inclusive value and no kids and no...
So it works really well. That station's the one that I have trouble getting. It's picking that up reasonably well. So there's a few little things I'm going to tidy up. I'll send it back to the owner. I think he should be happy with it. As I showed in part 1, here's the cabinet he's done, and he gave me this radio and said, can you just fix it up so it works? But when he did such a good job of the cabinet that he said, oh, perhaps you better do a proper job. And what a job it was. I have actually spent 4 months on this. It was such a big job I had to do it in conjunction with other work. So I had 2 projects going at once. So it went for a long time. I'm very grateful to the owner. He was very understanding. I think he'd be happy with this. I reckon it's come up pretty good. If you saw part 1, you'd see how it was originally and the trouble I had with it. I went off on a wild goose chase for a while, came back on track and finally got it working. But overall, yeah, nice project, a lot of work. I probably wouldn't like to do it again. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching me struggle with this STC radio. It's come up really, really nicely. I'm very happy with it. The owner should be delighted. And I hope you can join me next time for my next radio adventure.